Hi everyone, this week we're going to be talking about editing. Now, if you've seen any of our weekend vlogs, you'll know already that Sarah does all of our editing because she's really good at it.
Well, no, because most of it will look really rubbish now and people will be like, no she's not, and I'm like, ah. I'm better at film editing than I am our editing, but I've learned a lot. So my first piece of advice would be, put all of your footage into a timeline, depending on what program you're using. It doesn't have to be anything fancy for editing. You can use iMovie, you can do Windows Movie Maker, you know, anything you can get your hands on is great. Put all of your footage into the timeline and just watch it through once, because you really kind of get a better idea of where you can cut things. If you know after watching it that there's a lot of footage that you're not really interested in at the end, you know that you can save some more bits at the beginning. When you've watched it through, when you go through the second time, you know what's coming and you're not going to cut anything in the wrong place.
So our big tip, probably, cut lots of stuff. And this is going to sound like really weird advice, especially considering last week's film everything, but you have to cut a lot of stuff out. Like,
the way I kind of go about doing it is, have you got the gist of what's happening? Does anything else interesting happen? No, then you probably don't need the whole piece of footage. So for example, if you're on a flight and the flight is coming into land and you want to film a bit out the window, brilliant. Get that bit of footage in there so people understand what you're doing, the flight's landing. You don't then need to film the whole landing, I feel. And if you want to, maybe just take the bits that are interesting. So go from almost touchdown to landing. Like, you don't need 2 minutes of lead up to this, because 10 seconds in a video seems like hours. It's, you know, you'll look at something, you'll be like, that is literally a second long, but it's amazing how much just cutting a second really changes the pace for your video. You don't want it to be having everyone's attention for ages and then everyone's zoned out because you've held a clip for way too long and then everyone comes back in. You want a nice steady pace to keep everyone interested all the time.
And there are a lot of actions that you can do that with, where even if you want to show maybe more of it than just the end, you can show the beginning, you can show a clip from the middle, and you can show the wrap up if you really want to have like that 3-stage thing. I think a good example of this as well is parades. That's one that we always feel can definitely be cut down, just because usually you haven't got the perfect site for a parade. Usually you don't want to show all the parade. So if you show the parade beginning, everyone knows, hey great, the parade's starting. You show an interesting bit from the middle, or a bit that you really like, or something interesting happens, something cool happens, you show that moment. And then you can show sort of the sort of tail end last bits of the parade, and everyone knows, great, cool, we saw a cool bit in the middle, we saw it start, we saw it end, we know exactly what's gone on, but you haven't sat there for 10-15 minutes watching the whole thing, which can really slow down the pace of a video.
If you're saying, for example, should we go do this ride next, unless something really interesting happens on the journey, or you're talking about something, or you know, anything happens, cutting to the ride isn't going to throw people off because you said that's where you're going. It's not going to be jarring to be like, where are they now? Where are they now? Because you've kind of explained it, which is also why talking a lot in your videos does really help. You kind of explaining what you're doing, so the audience is kind of following along with you. If you are filming a video where you're not talking as much, then yeah, having kind of a couple shots to explain what you're doing or where you're going is great, but you don't need to hold it for like really long periods of time.
And again, even if you do want to show more of the sort of surrounds of Disney and you want to show a bit of your walk, great, show some visually interesting landmarks that you pass on your way there. You know, if it takes you 5 minutes to walk there, it shouldn't take 5 minutes to watch you walk there. That's kind of like the way we sort of feel about it, is it should take a lot less time, and so you can just keep people engaged.
When I first did the editing of our videos, I would do about 3 or 4 passes of the video. So I'd watch it through once, then I would go through and make the cuts that seemed really obvious. I would go through again and, you know, cut it a little bit shorter, and then I'd go through a final time and make what I call like the harsh cuts. They're like, right, I want this to be a 15-minute video, I've still got 25 minutes of footage left, what can be left out? What can, you know, hit the cutting room floor, as they say, what can I get rid of? And that's kind of how I did it the first time. I wouldn't necessarily say I'd need to do that as much anymore, because of weekend vlogs has really helped me edit our kind of sort of everyday vlogs.
We're a lot more familiar with the process.
But for a first time, that's exactly what I'd recommend you do.
And that's a very film-based approach. You often hear of the director's cut, or, you know, people will say, well, there was a 3-hour cut of that movie, and that's them going through at a very early stage and going, right, here's all the stuff we'd love to keep. How long is that? Is that too long? where do we start losing people? And then you start looking at it and you go, right, what needs to come out? What comes out to bring this down? Like, what's the least good moment in this whole thing? What's the bit that we can lose now? Like, looking at this whole thing of stuff we'd like to keep, what's the, if you had to cut something, what would it be? Yeah,
so that is definitely my first, I would say most important piece of advice. It doesn't really matter what you edit on. You know, we use Adobe Premiere Pro, that is like basically film industry standard now. It has a lot of features and functions, which if you don't really understand or know how to use, it's not really worth it for you if you're just basically going to cut a video. But when you get to the kind of level where you want to be changing filters and changing how it looks and having different kinds of cuts and having other shots over it and changing the audio, it really is good to kind of learn a kind of, not, I want to say better software, but more advanced software. And there's so many really good YouTube tutorials from people teaching you the basics. You know, if there's something I don't know in Premiere Pro, because during uni I used Final Cut Pro, but that kind of isn't a great software anymore. I had to relearn a whole new software to edit this, and a lot of things I didn't know I was able to learn through watching YouTube videos. The main things you're really looking for in an editing program, if you want to go really, really basic though, are just the ability to make cuts. As long as it makes cuts, it will do. And that's probably the biggest bit. I think we're going to spend most of this video talking about cuts. I think that's probably... It is the most important part of editing. Yeah. Because how you cut your video literally just determines everything about it. It's the most crucial part of editing, is where and when you decide to make the cuts. And it's the hardest thing to kind of understand and know where and when. I mean, you could probably talk about this a little bit more as, I don't want to say a newbie to editing. No, absolutely. And this is one of the things that really blows me away every single time I watch Sarah edit. We occasionally I've done like rough passes of like weekend vlogs and stuff on weekends where we knew we'd be pushed for time. And there have been huge sections where I'm like, I just don't know where to cut this. Like, I know there's got to be a cut somewhere. I just don't know where it is. And what Sarah's able to do after much experience is to come in, watch the footage through, and just go, you need a cut here, and then we'll put a cut there. And you'll take out a section and suddenly the whole thing flows better. And you can instantly see the improvement that it makes. And while that seems really, really daunting, it's actually something you sort of slowly start to pick up when you start doing it more often. You start thinking, actually, yeah, no, I think I can cut this bit here. And I'm nowhere near as good as Sarah at it. She's had years and years of practice. But I'm getting there, and I'm starting to know, no, it feels like here should be the cut. Now, it might be a few frames early, a few frames late, like there's always a bit of tidying up and improvements that I can do to it, but it is something that you start to pick up fairly quickly. So it might seem daunting, but just go in there. The best thing about it too is you just make a save file with all of your clips in order, and then you just try stuff out. And if you don't like it, you go back to the saved version, and anything you want to experiment with, you just make a little new version for it, and you just sort of try it out. That is a really good point, actually. When I mentioned earlier about doing passes, each one of those passes we save as a separate file, just in case. For example, I make a new pass of something and I hate it. And it would take so long, and maybe not even possible sometimes when you save, to go back and undo all those cuts. Whereas if you have a version that you've previously saved, you can jump back, and that's really great. Especially when we've been doing videos more recently that have required footage, we can go back and for the most part just have the initial just ordered clips and use those, and that's been really, really helpful. So that's how you kind of cut stuff to keep it interesting and keep the pace up. There are also lots of other kinds of cuts that you might need to do, and that's for content reasons, where something happens in the clip that you maybe don't want to show. Maybe it's a moment that you didn't really want to have in, or there's something in the scene that you're like, I don't really want that in my vlog, or, you know, plenty of other reasons. And that's a different way of cutting around stuff, and you might have to do that when you didn't want to, but there are ways that you can make that easier and to deal with that. Yeah, I mean, a few examples of these, just looking back to our vlogs, is people swearing in the background. Yeah. We had that a couple times, actually, people swearing at the camera, like in the back of the vlog. People being... Offensive t-shirts. Offensive t-shirts. People... We had this one couple that mimicked us, like behind us, but like not in a nice way, for ages. So I thought, you know, that's not really in the spirit of what we wanted to have come out, so we cut that. Anything that's got like a lot of children in, so for example like water parks, if we're filming around the water parks, to be fair, mostly in filming we were very conscious of where we were pointing the camera, tried to keep it on us. Because this content is going out on the internet, I wouldn't want to have an exposed shot. It's just, it would make me feel uncomfortable if we had footage of other people's children
in our video.
Our video. So we try and kind of keep that away. And actually, there are other reasons that it's really important to cut content, and I'll let you talk about this a bit more because this is kind of your side of things, and that's for copyright.
Ooh, yes. And so, I mean, with the other stuff, what you usually end up having to do is lose the clip. And that's kind of the same case with copyright. There's not much you can do about it. There are plenty of little tricks that you can use. We fake audio a lot if we have to. So you might have seen in our London vlog, we went to London, we ate at the Big Easy. They were playing some, we've talked about this before I think, they were playing like some very sort of generic 50s rock and roll. It was really loud, there was no way we'd have been able to film with the sound on, so we had to take the sound out. I grabbed some audio of a restaurant, put that in the background, and used some royalty-free, similar genre music to kind of patch that together and make it sound like it was all happening at once. So it was a way for us to use our clip without having to use copyrighted music. And it's things like that where you just sort of have to look at it and you go, is it worth the risk of keeping this in? It could take down my video. How hard is it to remove? If I can take it out and swap in some audio from somewhere else, great. Take it out and save yourself the headache, because copyright on YouTube is a big killer of vlogs, especially with Disney. Oh yeah, Disney, like as soon as any kind of firework parade, Disney classified music comes on, it gets flagged literally like immediately, pretty much. So you just have to be really careful of how well known is the song. Not well known, but how much of the song is being included, because if it's anything more than a bar, you probably need to cut it. Yeah, and that's the big thing, is does this need to stay? Do I need this here? Can I lose it and work around it? With cutting other people out the vlog, it is difficult. One big quick tip that I will share
yes, right is now, your thing that you love to do,
is with video clips, you can usually, in most editors, scale them to make them bigger. And so what we've done is whenever anyone's been in sort of the very edge of frame, or if I've been holding
your
the camera
nose has been in the edge of frame,
nose has creeped in, what you can do is you can make the clip slightly bigger, and that gives you just a little bit, so you can kind of nudge it off screen.
Just sort of a better example.
Which one?
You know, so you guys won't know about this, I don't believe.
You won't know about this. Oh.
So on our travel day, at the very end when I'm filming Ash, he's in his t-shirt, but he's also sitting in his pants. And I kept holding the camera too far down that you kept getting the side of your bright blue pants. So we had to crop it so your pants are out of the shot.
Because I gave Sarah the camera and I was like, look, my jeans are hanging up. I don't want to go put them on. Hold the camera and just aim it upwards at my face. Except you were lying down and being lazy, so you kind of just kept drifting downwards. And it was the wrap up for the day, so we had to come up with a way to keep that. And it was just make the clip bigger and push everything down below off screen.
So no one got to see your bright blue pants?
They did not.
That's still my favourite example. So talking about adding sounds to video, that's kind of also really important. The audio, any basically thing to do with audio, makes your video go from, what did they say? I can't follow this because I can't hear them, to, okay, totally know what's going on because it's all really clear and I can hear exactly what's going on. And audio is Ash's area. I am the clicky clicky, cuddy cuddy, typey typey. Ash is like, fix our voices, fix the hum that we had in every single clip of our video.
Not every single clip.
Most of the clips in our video.
Clips in our video.
Fix the lack of noise in any of Animal Kingdom. And that's kind of where you come in with the editing.
Now, with audio, the best thing to do is pick a level and stick to it. On ours, we go with -6 dB. On average, like the little bar should be spiking to about -6. And what I do before Sarah gets her hands on the clips is put them all in a line, go through and try and adjust the volume of every single one to be approximately level. I've learned some additional tricks for dealing with that, but they're quite complicated and I think I'll talk about them some other time.
That's a story for another time.
But on a basic level, with a basic editor, you just go through and you go, okay, we're really quiet in this one, let's up that until it's about the same. And then we're really loud in this one, so we'll just bring it down a little bit. And what you're wanting really is so that you can go from one clip to the next without there being too much of a jump in volume. If you're obviously being quiet somewhere and it's quite quiet, then that is going to be different, and that is okay. It's just, make sure that it's not too far out of line, and that if you were listening to it at an even volume, that you're not going, oh, I'd have to turn this up here, and oh, I'd just have to turn it down here, because it's your job to do the turning up and turning down for your viewers. You know, they shouldn't be having to flick up and flick down, and it's just making sure that nothing goes rah really loud all of a sudden and then drops to nothing for when you're really quiet in the next bit.
A really good example I see quite regularly on holiday videos, and this is not necessarily audio from people, that is quite a thing sometimes you can get around. It's the music audio. Now I usually, whenever I'm watching a Disney vlog, and it's terrible, I will sit with my control, because as soon as the music starts, kind of, quite actually not as often anymore, but used to be, as soon as the title music or a song played in the video, you would have to turn the right down, and then when it came back to people, you'd have to turn the TV volume back up to like 40 because you couldn't hear it. So again, not just audio, the actual music that you pick, you really need to adjust the sound on that, because that is always so loud. Like, it's never too quiet, always too loud.
A lot of audio tracks come in at sort of 0 dB. They kind of come in at a very flat 0, and where our videos are mostly sort of around the sort of -8 to -6 mark, that makes the music a lot louder than what you've previously been listening to. And the reason a lot of tracks come like that is just because that's what they kind of balance to in a WAV file. It's just how it works. It's so you have the most freedom to be able to do with it what you need to if you're using it in a high-end production. But you just need to bring it down a little. Like, pretty much in every case, as soon as you drop some music on the timeline, it will probably need to be quieter. And if you can, fade it in and fade it out, because abruptly ending music is really obviously that it abruptly ended. If you just fade it out for a second or two, you won't even really notice that the music is gone. Think about your end product. You know, think you've picked a style in the first week, like we talked about. Bear that in mind when it comes to editing. And you know, if you're doing one of those real cinematic styles, you should think about that when you're filming. You should think about that when you're buying your equipment. You should think about that while you're editing. It should be present in everything that you do. And you know, if you want to go the chatty happy vlog route, that's great. That also needs to be present in your editing, and you need to look at your style and look at examples of your style and look at the way that they edit things. It's a very different way of looking at stuff. But I can honestly say that since doing our vlog, I notice cuts and things in other people's vlogs, in movies, everything, a whole lot more. I look at it and I go, that makes sense why that cut is there, or I wouldn't have put that cut there, I would have put it somewhere else. And it's just bearing in mind what you're trying to get to the whole time. It's so, so important.
I think that's a great bit of advice. Watch other people's videos, because where I came from film editing is very much, you want to hide the cuts. You don't want to notice that someone's made a cut. You don't want to go, oh, a cut happened there, unless it's there for story purposes. Vlogging and YouTube editing is like completely different, because you know what? If there's a cut, it doesn't really matter if I'm going from here to here. Like, if I constantly do jump cuts, it doesn't matter as much as it would in a film or a TV, which is kind of weird to me. And it took me a long time to practice. I watched Zoella for a little bit to see how she did it, Tanya Baird, Jim Chapman, like quite a few American vloggers as well, and filmers, just to kind of get an idea of how they cut things. And it's so different. It took me so long to get my head around, but just, if it's not important, don't keep it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to seamlessly flow. And I know I talked about pacing, but you can create pace without having something be literally one after the other.
I think watching other people's stuff is also a good way to get a feel for what works and what doesn't work. I know for us, when we were doing our first vlog, we watched through a lot of people's content, and I made a huge list of notes. Like, I made a massive list of notes of shots that I liked, everything, but also moments where people were losing my attention. I was starting to lose attention when they did this, so people are probably going to do that in my videos if I was to do that. And you just try and keep in mind, like, this is where other people lost me, so I'm going to try extra hard not to lose people in my content.
And I don't want to say we're perfect here. Now, I watch some of our own content back, and I lose interest in ourselves, and I edited it. I would like to think we've got better, but I don't think we're like 100% there yet. So don't, you know, if you...
definitely not. No, we make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I left a clip in like a month ago that I didn't even realise I left in, and people were like, was that meant to be in there? And I was like, nope, I was too busy thinking about ice cream.
I forgot to put the sound on a clip.
Yeah, you know, we do this quite a bit, and you could watch our videos and go, well, I don't like the way that sounds fun, do that, and I'm definitely brilliant, because your vlog will definitely be better than ours if you can improve it. And then, you know, we're never meaning it in a judgy way, we're just thinking...
No, we're just trying to show what we wish we'd known previously and how we're trying to, because all of this is stuff that we're going to be doing for our next one. Like,
and it's most of it's mistakes we made before as well.
This vlog, this whole series might as well be called Mistakes We Made Last Time That We Will Try Not to Make Again.
I know, we literally said the other day, like, we need to rewatch these videos when we go so that we know what we're doing, because, yeah, literally everything we talk about and all these mistakes and things that are wrong we're saying, we've done them, and that's how we know that they're mistakes and something we don't want to be doing again.
So I think next week we're going to be doing the final one of these series, and it's going to be dealing with YouTube. Sort of how you get your content on YouTube, how you deal with it, how you set up a channel, and not in like a lot of detail, but just things, again, we wish we'd known when we were setting up our channel that we've had to learn since, that it would have been so nice to know beforehand. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week, and hopefully you'll find that useful too. And so we'll see you next week.
Bye!
Bye.
So my purse, I was going to say first piece, and I ended up saying purse. Sorry.
Thank you for watching this video. Really hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and why not subscribe to our channel? You can also check out one of our other videos that should be on screen right about now.